Hey everybody, this is Rick May of Rick Rolled Reviews, and today we're taking a look at the game Sorcerer. As far as I know, I haven't really seen many how to play videos out there for the game, and I know there's been a lot of people in the community on Facebook asking for some kind of how to play video. Now, granted, I am not I am not blessed with great equipment, nor am I blessed with some production software or production crew that's going to take this video and make it all fancy and stuff. Maybe someday. So this will basically be a very low quality video, but it's going to teach you the basics you need to know how to play this great game, and jump right in. Now let me say first, this game is produced by White Wizard Games and was designed by Peter Schultz along with Rob Doherty and Darwin Castle, who kind of helped polish up the game and take the original and add some things to it and kind of sharpen it up. So let's take a look at what we've got. The first thing we're going to focus on is these card decks here. Now I've only laid out one of each of the types of cards. If you notice in the rule book here, if you've got the base game, you're going to have 4 character decks, 4 lineage decks, and then 4 domain decks. And when you're playing Sorcerer, what you're going to be doing is you're going to be picking one of each of those types of decks, and then they're going to get combined and smashed together to make your Sorcerer. And so this gives a lot of replayability to the game because there's all sorts of different combinations between character, lineage, and domain that you can do. And if you happen to get any of the additional content, either through the Kickstarter exclusives or you pick stuff up retail, there's some extra lineage and domain and character decks out there that will give you even more options to play around with. But yeah, so you've got your character deck, which tells you who you are and kind of gives you a deck of monsters and minions that are related to you. And then you've got your lineage deck, and lineage is about the type of magic that you personally specialize in. And again, you're going to get a host of monsters, minions, and spells that are related to that lineage. And then finally we've got the domain deck, and domain is where you trained and honed your skills. And again, you'll have all of those things, the monsters, minions, and spells that kind of get thrown into that deck. Now your character deck and your domain deck are both 10 cards apiece. Your lineage decks are 20 cards decks, so they're going to be really the meat of who your sorcerer is. That type of magic they practice will contribute a lot to what's coming up in your deck. So at the beginning of the game, if I had more space I would do this, but at the beginning of the game you're going to lay out all your character decks, all your lineage decks, and all your domain decks. And the game says if you haven't played before or you're still kind of new to the game, you can do a random selection where you take the first card off the top of each of these decks, and say you take all your sorcerers, all your character decks, the first card, you shuffle those together and you hand out one to each player randomly, and then do the same with your lineage, and then the same with your domain, and that's the way you get your 3 decks to smash together. If you're a more experienced player and you want to have a drafting element for it, you can draft with the first player getting to choose first on the character decks and then going clockwise around the table. Then the person who chose character last will choose first on the lineage decks, and that'll go counterclockwise. And then you go back to first player clockwise with the domain decks to do your drafting. So that's how you pick your decks. What you would do then is once you've got your deck, you're going to take the first card off the top of each of these. These will I put them on my board right now, but these will sit off somewhere to the side of your board, and you'll have your character defined. In this case, we've got Tegu, the Demonologist, of the Screaming Coast. And you'll notice on the bottom of each of these cards there is text that tells you what you can do. So your character card is always going to give you an action. We'll talk more about that later. Your demonology, or excuse me, your lineage will give you an ongoing effect, and then your domain will give you a tactic. And we'll talk about how all those things come into play during the game. For the rest of the cards you got, since I'm one-handed right now, I'm not going to be able to shuffle these together really well, so I'm not going to do that. But you would take all these 3 decks, shuffle them together really well, and then deal yourself out a hand of 6 cards. And I think it's kind of funny and thematic too, that the way this game starts is you start out with 6 energy, 6 actions, and 6 cards in your hands for the mark of the beast there, 666. So what you're going to be doing in this game is you're going to be battling over different areas of the city of London. There's 3 different battlefields. Each have a health meter on both sides of it so that you can track how much damage has been done. And your goal is to take and damage a battlefield to max for 2 of the 3 battlefields. If you're the first person to get that damage maxed out on the battlefield, then you will flip the board. And let me just show you that real quick. So I'll take these guys off of here. You'll flip it, and then whoever won it, let's say it's me, will put the little marker on their side of the board to denote that they have taken control of that battlefield. Once one person has taken control of 2 of the 3 battlefields, they have won the game. And again, you're going to be using these little red markers here to track how much damage is done to each battlefield or each side of the battlefield. I kind of put mine in the middle of the battlefield during the game until we actually move on to 1 or greater for damage. So now getting into the cards again, the various cards in your deck, you have a couple of different types. One of the common types here is your monsters or your creatures here that you might have, and they are going to have an energy cost up in the top corner. They're going to have an amount of damage that they do, an amount of essence, which is basically their health, and then they might also have some text of when played or actions or ongoing effects. Also, to help you get these guys back into the proper decks, you'll notice over here this little symbol tells you that this guy is from the Demonologist deck, so I can sort my stuff back out really easy. Also, you'll notice with this character in particular, they've got a little pentagram there underneath the cost, and that means once you put this character into play, you're going to gain one of these little omen tokens, and we'll talk about what those do in a bit. Sometimes you'll have off to the left of the card's name, you'll see there's almost like a little skull symbol. It's kind of hard to see, it's very small print, but that means that this monster is a legendary monster. He's kind of like a named dude, and so that'll come into play with certain card text. Will say that you either can or cannot do stuff to a legendary minion. And I apologize too, because I might be using the wrong terminology here on what these cards are called. Let me just flip in the book really quick and make sure that I'm using proper terminology. So those are minions, is what those are called. When you have the cross swords, anytime you see those, that means that effect is only going to happen in the battlefield where they are at. So when you're playing these cards, you're going to play them into one of the 3 battlefields on your side. You can have at most 4 of your minions per side of the battlefield. And once they are placed in that battlefield, they can eventually move around, but that's where they're going to be fighting, and that's where, in this case, his effect is going to take place. So that is how minions work. And then we also have sorceries. And sorceries are basically one-time actions that you just play and then discard. So you'll notice up at the top, this one costs 1 energy, and it also gives you an omen token. You just do what the card tells you to do, and like I said, then you will discard that card. Pretty simple. And then let me see if I can find an attachment. Oh, perfect. Right here. This card is an attachment. So when you play this card, you're going to kind of slip it underneath a minion that is in play, and then that will either boost their damage and essence, or it will reduce their damage and essence, and it will also usually have some kind of card text that'll allow you to do something with it when it's attached. So those are the attachments. And those are the 3 types of cards that are in the game. Put these, well, I'll keep this guy out here for future reference. And we reference the energy cost. You've got like a little energy meter over here. Everybody starts the game with 6 energy. Each round we'll talk about the setup phase that you can get more energy added to that, and then certain cards you play can sometimes give you energy. So we'll go over all those things. All right, so let's talk about how the actual game is played. And the nice thing, one of the things I love about this game is that right on your player board, you have all of the phases of the game, a little glossary, because remember we talked about that legend minion and the cross swords, those are referenced there. But it tells you every step of what to do during each phase of the game. Now the first thing that happens is your ready phase. We'll talk about that, but during your first round, you're going to skip the ready phase. This will only be when you are going into the second round and further. So the first thing that happens is the new first player gains the fate counter, full side up. Forgot to talk about this fate counter here. This is the full side. This is the empty side. We'll talk about what that does once we get into the battle phase of the instructions here. Then you're going to ready all exhausted cards in play. So just kind of like most Magic type card games, when you use a card for its effect, or you use it to attack, I should say, you're going to exhaust it, and then at the end of the ready phase each turn, you're going to write that back up. Next thing that happens is the first player rolls the energy die or has all players gain 4 energy. So you've got this energy die here, and it's got values from 1 to 8. And so you just kind of move these dice out of the way. If you choose to roll the dice, you get whatever it says. Oh, in this case, we would both get 7 energy. Or you both get 4. It definitely can be kind of a tactical decision. If you're really high up on energy already and your opponent's not, you might say, well, let's just take 4 energy. And because I'm not going to be able to benefit from getting a lot, whereas they will. Other times, if you're both kind of low, it usually makes sense to go ahead and roll the die and hope to get a good amount of energy. Of course, you might get more than 4. There's also a chance you might get less than 4 based on what you roll on the dice. So that's step 3. Step 4 is set all action trackers to 6. So here's your action tracker here. Each round you're only going to be able to get 6 actions. So at the beginning of the next round, you're going to have to reset this back up to 6. And then step 5, each player gains 1 omen. Again, that's one of these tokens, and we'll talk about how they come into play during the battle phase. And step 6, starting with the first player, players put their avatars into any battlefield. I completely forgot to grab my avatars out. They're little standees that represent your character. And they will go into one of these 3 battlefields. And you can move them around at the beginning of each round. And the significance of that is you'll notice that just like that minion card, Tegu here has crossed swords. Same with his ongoing ability, ongoing ability, and his tactic. So that means that for Tegu, Tegu's only going to be able to activate his abilities here on his 3 cards in the battlefield where he's located. So generally speaking, you want your Sorcerer to be where you need the most reinforcement and where you're going to want to use their abilities at, because they can't use them in any other battlefield, even as powerful as they are. All right. After you have done all these ready phase things each round, again, first round, you're going to skip those. Then you're going to go to the action phase. And as mentioned before, you got your action marker here. Each of you is going to get 6 actions. You're going to go back and forth taking 1 action apiece until you've both used up all your actions. And here are the things that you can do. 1, you can channel energy. And in that case, you gain 2 energy on your energy meter. 2, you can meditate, which means you draw 2 cards into your hand. 3, you can cast a spell, which is basically play one of those sorcery cards from your hand. Or could be a sorcery. You could be playing a minion out into the battlefield. You could be playing a detachment. Any of those things count as playing casting a spell, I should say. You can activate a power. So you use an action effect on any of your cards. So, for example, Tegu has an action effect, so he can exhaust this card to play a minion from your hand, paying its cost, and draw 2 cards. And then the final thing you can do is you can reinforce, which is you can move 1 of your minions or swap 2 of your minions in adjacent battlefields. You can also, when you take this action, in addition to or just doing this, you can move your Sorcerer to a different battlefield adjacent. Now, most minions are only able to move to an adjacent battlefield. There are some that have a little winged symbol underneath the energy cost. And what that means is that they can fly. And if they can fly, they can go from one side of the town all the way to the other in 1 move. So it makes them a little bit more mobile and flexible, which is very, very handy. So like I said, we're going to be taking actions 1 at a time until each of us have taken 6 actions. By that point, we're going to have probably some minions in 1 or more of the battlefield on opposite sides. And then it is time for battle to take place, which is the meat of the game, basically, of minions clashing against other minions, sorcerers casting their spells to try to attack and defend. So what's going to happen is the priority order changes from battlefield to battlefield. So starting with the battlefield to the first player's left, players alternate attacking. The first player attacks first in the center battlefield and attacks second in the flanking battlefields. So to attack, what you do is you exhaust 1 of your minions to declare an attack. You resolve all applicable tactics. Now that's one of the things that we kind of mentioned in passing, is that some of these cards have tactics on them. So tactics only fire off when the minion or the attachment on a minion is attacking. So you resolve those tactics, and then we roll the battle dice. Let's talk a little bit about that before we talk about resolution and everything. So let's say I had this minion here in this battlefield, and let's say for fun, let's put this guy over here. He would be kind of upside down like this on my opponent's side, but I'm just going to put him upside like this to just kind of show you what's happening. So this particular guy has 2 health, or excuse me, 2 attack, 1 essence. And I have 5 attack and 4 essence. And I am going to get to attack first. Let's say I'm the first player. This is a central battlefield, so I get first go. We've got these dice. There are a total of 7 dice in the game. You are piece limited, so even if you can attach stuff to your minion and make them, beef them up to where their attack number is higher than 7, you're only ever going to get to roll 7 dice. There are 3 possible results you can get. Excuse me, 4 possible results. And they're all shown right here. So the first is a blank, which is basically meaning nothing, you whiff. The second is a single damage. The third is double damage. And the fourth is a crit damage. Now the difference between these regular damage and the crit damage is regular damage, your opponent gets to decide where to assign that damage, whether they want to assign it to the battlefield or to minions, and they can split it out in any way that they want. They can put, 1 on this guy, and well, of course, if they do put 1 on this guy because he's got 1 essence, he is going to get killed and get removed from the battlefield. So if he wanted to preserve this guy because he knows next he's going to get to attack, and he doesn't want him to die, he wants to be able to at least use this guy once in an attack, he could choose to put all the damage on the battlefield. If he has that choice where it's all just the normal damage. If it's crit damage, that the attacker gets to decide where that damage goes. And they get to decide that before any defender assigned damage gets assigned. So if I had, let's say this guy rolls a total of 5 dice. So let's say that was my outcome. I could say, okay, I don't want to have to deal with your minion attacking me back. So I'm going to use my crit and I'm going to attack him for 1 damage. That takes him out of the game. Great. Now we have 3 more damage left over, but that he gets to choose. Although in this case, he has no choice. All 3 of that damage is going to have to go to the battlefield because he doesn't have any other minions there to defend the battlefield and absorb damage for him. So that's kind of how that works. Now, in addition to that, there's a little bit of dice manipulation that goes on. So let's say again, let's say these are the 5 dice that I rolled. There's a couple of things that can manipulate dice results. One is these omen tokens. And omen tokens can be used to re-roll any 1 die, if you're choosing, or your opponent can spend 1 and force you to re-roll. So how this would work is if I rolled this first, let's say, I'm like, oh, well, this is all right, but I got 2 blanks. Maybe I don't really like that, even though probably, to be honest, this is a decent roll. I'd probably keep it. I can take my 1 omen that I have, and I can spend that, and I can re-roll 1 of these blanks. All right, wow, I got another crit. Again, in this particular battle scenario, I don't know if that would have mattered too much to me, but in others, that would have been great. So now, I can continue to use any omens I have to keep re-rolling dice, or at a certain point, I can say, you know what? I'm good with this roll. And then I pass to my opponent, the defender. The defender then can spend omen tokens to force re-rolls on individual dice. And he can do that as much as he or she wants. And then once they're done messing with the dice, they say that they're done, they pass, it goes back to me. And again, I now can say, okay, well, I'm going to spend more omens to mess with the dice more, and back and forth, until finally both players pass and accept the dice results. And then, like I said, crit damage is assigned by the attacker, regular damage is assigned by the defender, and all applicable effects are resolved in that case. Now, the thing I didn't talk about yet was this cool little omen token. Or excuse me, not the omen token. That is the fate counter. So the fate counter is extra powerful. That can be used at any time. You just flip it, and you can re-roll all of the dice. Or you can force your opponent to re-roll all of their dice. So that is a handy one, and that's the thing that in the ready phase, it's always going to pass to the first player, which is going to flip back and forth. So each time, a different player is going to have the fate counter and have that power to be able to flip it over and force an entire set of battle dice to be rerolled, which can be really devastating. But you have to kind of choose, when are you going to use it? Are you going to use it on your roll, or are you going to use it on your opponent's roll? That can be a interesting choice to make strategically, because once it's used, that's it for the round, and next round it's going to get passed to your opponent, and then you're not going to have it next time. So that's a little bit about battle. Let's zoom in here again. So we talked about step 4 with the attacker and the defender using omens to reroll damage, and we talked about step 5, evaluating damage. So all of that is your battle phase, and then finally we get to the end of the round phase, and starting with the first player, resolve all end of round effects. So these will be things that are on certain minion cards that say end of round, and those then get resolved, and then we go back into the ready phase and reset everything and go again. And we will go back and forth like this, or we'll go through all these phases over and over again until one player has captured 2 battlefields, and at that point the game ends, and the person who captured the 2 battlefields is the winner. Now, with all that being said, a couple caveats. Number 1, this really cool sword you've been seeing in the background, not included in the game. Also, these dice, these are the bigger, chunkier dice that do not come with the base set. I ordered these separately. You can get them from White Wizard Games, or perhaps another distributor that carries them. Personally, I absolutely love the chunky dice. I didn't get them when I did the Kickstarter, and then I had regrets. I finally got myself a set, and I really feel like these feel so much better rolling. You might feel differently. You might like the smaller dice better. In fact, let me see. It's going to be kind of hard to get at the other dice to show you the difference, but it's probably about a third, if not more, bigger than the dice that come with the game. The next caveat is, so we didn't really talk about damage counters. So your omen counters on the other side, they're damage counters, so you can use them for either one. This guy was kind of a little wimpy dude. He only had 1 health, so as soon as he takes damage, he's toast. My guy, a little bit stronger. So if he takes damage and it doesn't kill him, he just gets these damage tokens to track how much he has. And those do not heal up between round and round. So he will keep on taking damage until he meets or exceeds his essence, which in this case is 4. You will also see some characters have an ability called Weaken. Weaken is about equivalent to damage, except for the fact that you cannot weaken a minion to death. So you can take them right to the edge. In other words, with this guy right now, he's got 1 damage on him. He's got 4 essence. I could weaken him 2 times, but then after that, it would have to be damage to actually do the killing blow and take him out. I can't weaken him to the point of him getting removed. So that's another thing. There are other tokens in the game that come with the deck. I in particular chose the Demonologist. Demonologists like fire. So in the base set where you've got the Demonologist and the Animist, they both have their own tokens. Demonologists have little tokens. They're the same size as the Omen tokens, but they have flames on them. And then you can put those onto a minion, and at the end of round, each flame counter on a minion will do 1 damage to them. So that's kind of nice residual damage. The Animist has little bugs, little bug followers, and they go on their own minions to indicate that they're actually beefing them up with these little bugs, and they have extra attack value. So there's other decks that also come, like the Kickstarter exclusives and the expansion content in the box, that that have their own unique counters, like the Druids as well do. Our Druids do as well. But we won't go through all those things. I think, I just mainly today I just wanted to give you the basics so you could jump in and start playing, and then just consult the rule book as needed. There definitely are some things that you will probably need to look up. Priority when several things are happening, or different card interactions might cause you to have to look them up. But I'll let you explore those things on your own. But I believe that is really the essence of Sorcerer.